2 minutes until showtime.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the program. This is the Trucking with Authority show. For the next hour, consider me your navigator on your journey to success in business, especially the trucking business. My name is Kenny Long, and we can talk about anything here tonight on this show, from getting started as a driver to buying your first truck, leasing to a carrier. In this market, a lot of people are looking to switch carriers, so we can talk about that. We can talk about moving on and getting your own authority, dealing with the FMCSA, record-keeping requirements, insurance requirements, the legal ramifications, contract messes that you have to deal with, working with brokers, finding freight, load boards, sales calls, negotiations, direct customers, you name it. We can talk about that here on this show. It is spring. Matter of fact, 1 week from today is the first day of spring. So I'm a week early. I could have held off on this show for a week, but I think it is a good time to do this because we need to be prepared. Been watching rates, as I always do, and rates have been just, phenomenal. I don't know how anybody complains, but of course, people do complain. But I've been watching the DAT trend lines, and rates currently in all segments are currently higher right now than they were at any time during 2015 or 16 combined. At any time, rates have never been this way for van, flatbed, reefer, you name it. Rates are right now would be a record setting. Now, we did have a bit of a spike in January. They've tapered off a little bit, but van rates have been at $2.14 for 3 consecutive weeks. The DAT trend lines report just came out today. Usually comes out late Tuesday or early Wednesday. It came out earlier today, and it's been coming out earlier and earlier recently. And, van rates have, for 3 consecutive weeks, been at $2.14 per mile, only dropped from $2.15 per mile before that, and a slight decrease, a few cents week over week, going back to the peak that we had back in January. Reefer, we're seeing the same type of trends. We're at $2.45 a month ago, dropped a couple of pennies to $2.43, but 2 weeks in a row now, $2.40 per mile week over week. Things have leveled out. We have reached the end, it looks like, of the slow season. So things are slower than they will be for the rest of the year right now. But over this next week, we're going to see rates, continue this trend, leveled out, and probably, most likely, as we come into April, of course, April brings with it new regulations along with the springtime freight. I'm starting to see produce already starting to come ripe here in Florida. And, I'm starting to see strawberries, there's berries, there's, Florida has multiple produce seasons, and we're right in the beginning of the big spring season. So, good news all around. This is a great place to be as far as rates this time of year. So that's a fantastic thing. We are streaming live on all the platforms again today, streaming live on YouTube at the Trucking with Authority YouTube channel, live on Facebook in just about every group I could share it to. You can find the homepage for us at Trucking with Authority. There's a page and a group. Like us and join the group over there. If you have any questions or comments that don't get answered on this show, that's the place to find them. Start the discussions. And I find a lot of the topics for the shows that I do in those groups. Of course, over the past couple of months, I have a group that I started about in 2014 called Trucking Rates and Lanes. And we've been adding pretty consistently a few hundred here and there. And we were at about 5,000 or 6,000 members about 2 months ago. And we have almost more than doubled, actually, just in the past couple of months. Of course, that is due to the fact that we are in just an amazing freight market, and people are educating themselves, which is a good thing. People are starting to look for how to find the trends, find the information, negotiate, start to compare their rates with what others are doing, and try to make sure that they're not shortchanging themselves. So that's a great place to find information. Trucking Rates and Lanes on Facebook. There's a lot of discussion going on over there. I haven't been all that active on Facebook. I chime in on a few comments and questions from now and then, but for the most part, the discussions are other members, and there are some great discussions that happen. A lot of very knowledgeable members in all of the groups. So those are good places to find the best information out there. But it is spring. There's a lot of amazing things happening, a lot of great opportunities ahead of us. And today I want to talk about what we can do to take advantage of that. I want to talk about the rates, negotiations, but there's more than that. We talk about rates and negotiations and trends and things all the time. I think that's a good place to start because the way the market is going, that's obviously one of the most important things right now. The rates are fantastic. As I said, the vans and the reefers have pretty much plateaued. They've leveled out here at vans at $214 a mile. Looks like reefers have leveled out at $240 a mile. Those are amazing numbers. I know for 2 years, 2015, 2016, I was just waiting for the $2 barrier to be broken again with vans. I just wanted to see those rates get over $2 a mile, and we're at $214, and they've been consistently higher than that for since January 1st. We've been just in a great freight market. And reefers at $240 a mile, you can't ask for more than that. Flatbeds are showing signs of the season. So flatbeds never really took a huge hit this year. Typically flatbeds just tank in the wintertime, and they held pretty strong and consistent. They were at $230 a mile in the beginning of February, $235, $239, and this past week we're at $250. So they've been increasing in the hardest segment of the year, the hardest time period of the year. Flatbeds have been on an increase. Now, an 11-cent increase in the second week of March, an 11-cent increase for flatbeds. That is good news. The way the trend lines tend to follow, the trends tend to go, flatbed is typically the first to see a big change. So flatbed, especially this time of year, you start to see more of the landscaping products and more farm equipment, machinery, things like that start to move as the homeowners start to get ready for their spring seasons. You start to see the nursery stock moving. That's probably what's holding a lot of the vans and reefers steady and consistent. A lot of nursery stock, flowers, and so forth. I'm starting to see sod moving here in South Florida area. Of course, you've got your landscape stone and mulch, which those might be considered cheap freight, but those are the signs of the season. When you see that stuff moving, when that stuff's out there moving because there's a demand for it, most of the year there's not a big demand for those, but in the spring season is when people are redoing everything in their lawns and in their yards, and even commercially there's a lot of new landscaping going on. Those types of things, of course, you've got your Bobcat type equipment moving, your farm machinery start moving. Farmers have been starting to break ground as you look north from Florida, going north into Georgia and into Tennessee even. You're starting to see the springtime tilling of the land, so that's always good news. And the way this market is going, the way the economy rather, not just the trucking market, but the economy in general, I expect it to be a pretty strong year for every industry. Manufacturing is way up. For the first time in decades, manufacturing is on a huge upturn. That's fantastic for the economy. It's putting more people to work. More people to work means they're earning more money. They have more money to earn, they're spending more money. They spend more money, there's more freight for us to haul. So just the fact that they're back to work, the factories are opening back up. I was just watching some new steel mills that are taking the shutters down, and they've been down for a couple of years. And the steel mills have been shut down. Aluminum smelters have been shut down for a few years, and so those industries are starting to fire back up again, which is fantastic news. Those have been overseas jobs. A lot of that industry has been taken by China, and finally that work is starting to come back here. Politics aside, anytime the industries are coming back to this country is a good thing for our economy. So that means, and I'm sure that's why we're seeing this early spike in flatbeds, and that's what's been holding them strong all winter, and for vans and reefers to be holding strong. And even if they were to taper off another penny or two as we come into April, I think we're going to see huge, we're going to see these graphs that have been just little molehills. We're going to see mountains on these graphs. So that's a very good sign. So what that means is a lot of opportunity. With opportunity comes a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of things we can do to take advantage of not only the rates, because rates are a lot of what I talk about on this show and a lot of how I try to negotiate to get higher gross revenue. But remember, as we're coming into the new freight season, the new year for the freight season, there's a lot that we can do to reduce the numbers on our expense side. So, again, we are streaming live on YouTube, streaming live on Facebook. We've got a lot of questions and comments coming in on both sides of that. And we are also live on Blog Talk. Let me just bring up the switchboard there for Blog Talk and make sure that I'm monitoring all these phone calls as well. Call the number at the bottom of your screen, 917-889-9924. When you get on the line, go ahead and press number 1. Looks like I have plenty of callers in the room. Go ahead and press number 1 on the keypad if you have any questions, comments, things you'd like to add, your opinion, whatever it is. The show is all yours. So I will definitely put you ahead of anything that I might have to say. I always take notes. I've got a lot of things to talk about. This is an hour-long show. We go live at 7, and my hour typically turns into an hour and a half or 2 hours sometimes because I have a big mouth. So I would rather give the show to you. You all have the floor. Press number 1 on your keypad, and I will make sure that I zip it and let you have the floor. So, all right. Just checking the comments here. Again, if you're watching the live stream, we're streaming live on YouTube. We're streaming live on Facebook, and we're live in just about every trucking group out there right now. If you're watching one of these live video streams while you are driving, please turn that off. Call the number 917-889-9924. That's the beauty of having the show set up this way. You don't have to watch an actual video. Go ahead and call the number. You can listen to the show. This is not a conference call. You won't just be automatically brought on live. You can just listen in. If you do want to add anything or you have a comment, just press 1 on your keypad. That's essentially you're raising your hand. Puts a little light on my screen here. Elizabeth is in the other room. This works just like a radio show. She will answer the phone. She'll screen your calls and get your questions. If you're a little shy about coming on the air, don't be. This is not a big deal at all. Come on, ask your questions, bring your comments, and we'll get to them here. If you have anything, if you're watching one of the streams, if you leave any comments on the social media, on any of the pages, I will try to get to those at the end, but I am going to take all the phone calls first. So if you have anything you'd like to add, it's best to get on the phone lines. All right. So the first things first. Freight's awesome, right? We've established that. Freight is awesome. Like the rates, are still, for a trend to be going on this long, we're record setting, okay? there's a lot of things that are contributing factors to that. So we do have the ELD mandate. A lot of people put the ELD mandate on top of the list as to why the rates are the way they are. It has something to do with it, okay? I am not going to put all of it on the ELD mandate. We are also, as I mentioned, the economy right now is rocking. The economy is booming. That's an awesome thing. We're having a lot of success across the country right now. People are back to work. Unemployment is the lowest it's been in years. Things are just phenomenal with the economy. Consumer confidence is super high. Right now, people are willing to spend money. Interest rates are still super low. So interest rates are lower than they have been. You know, I may have ticked up a little recently, but interest rates are still super low. So people are willing to spend money. They can get money, borrow money super cheap, buy money from the bank, and you know, they can invest the money that they borrow. In some cases, they can earn more than they borrow it for. So I mean, money is flowing. People are going back to work. The economy is rocking. You know, factories are opening up. The manufacturers are bringing work back into this country, and that's all good for us. All of that is contributing to the high demand for the trucks. So we have high demand. We need more trucks out there. On the other side of that, we have the driver shortage. Now, we've been talking about a driver shortage. Every news article, all the major fleets, they're all talking about a driver shortage. They've been talking about it since, I don't know that they've ever not talked about it. There's always been a driver shortage, right? But now I think we are actually coming into a period where this driver shortage, so to speak, is rearing its head. We're starting to actually see some of the results of that, because we need more trucks, but we can't get drivers to fill the trucks. We can't get drivers that we need to go to work. So what's that going to take? That's going to take more money. Supply and demand always rules, even when it comes to hiring drivers. So the fleets, the mega fleets, and everybody below is going to have to start ponying up the dollars. You're going to have to start paying drivers more to make them happy. That's just the nature of the beast, supply and demand at work. So I expect rates to go up, not just truckload to the carrier rate, but also get that passed down to owner operators, and that will be passed down as well to drivers. So those things are going to be happening. That's a good thing for us as well. Now, I talk a lot. I mean, it's Trucking with Authority. It's supposed to be the show for carriers that go out and get their authority. If you have your authority and you want to hire drivers, you need to keep these things in mind. What does it mean when you start playing with your money? So you have to pay more here or earn more there. It means you have to know your numbers. So now is just as important as ever. And you know, every day when you talk about knowing your numbers, now is the most important time ever, right? It's always the most important time. There is no better time than right this minute. I talk to people at in June that say, I'm going to wait until January 1st to start my new accounting program so I can start the new year that way. Or I'm going to wait till the first of the new quarter. Or I'm going to wait till whatever the excuse is. How about start today? Now is the time to start. Start today. There's a lot of software out there that can help you with this. If you don't want to spend the money, there's free software that can help you with this. I mean, Excel spreadsheets can help you with this. If you're not good with computers, you can do this by hand, old school, and you can do this on paper if you'd like to do that. The key is do it. You need to know your numbers. You need to know where you stand. You need to know your revenue, your net, your gross, your net, your profits, your driver pay. Even if you're driving it yourself, you need to know what you're actually earning. A lot of people, when the market is slow, find out that they could actually be earning more as a company driver. Well, if that's the case, if you're a carrier and you could still be earning more if you went to work for somebody else, well, maybe you need to adjust your rates somewhere else or save money on another line somewhere. But you don't know that unless you're tracking your numbers. So now is a super important time to know your numbers. Track it close. Track everything. There are a lot of owner-operators that are getting ready to make a switch right now. I have had a huge influx, of people that want to come as owner-operators, come work under my carrier, Patriot Star. And we are hiring, by the way. So there's my shameless plug. We're hiring. We're actually slowing down a little bit. I won't be able to bring anybody on until May. And it looks like our list for May is filling up quickly. So we're hiring. A lot of owner-operators are looking to make a switch. If you're an owner-operator and you're looking to bring somebody on, know your numbers. Know what it will take. I just talked to a fairly new owner-operator independent carrier today, just recently, about 6 months, 7 months with brand new authority, and wants to add a second truck as an owner-operator. I hope, and this was the discussion we had, I hope they know all the ins and outs of that. So if you're in that situation, if you're running a carrier and you want to add a truck and bring on drivers, make sure you understand the risks involved, understand what it takes to pay drivers, understand how to go about making sure you have the driver background checks, and understand that just because somebody wants to come work for you doesn't mean you have to jump on it and hire them. No is always a good answer. You avoid a lot of risk by saying no. So just remember that no is a viable answer for every situation. Okay, so when it comes to hiring a driver, bringing on a second truck, understand the risks involved. Now, Elizabeth and I, we hired somebody to work in the office. We're only running 14 trucks right now. Like I said, we're getting ready to expand more. We'll be bringing on several more. We'll probably have double the fleet by the end of the year, maybe more. And you know, we had to hire somebody to help in the office. We're getting ready to spend a ton of money on software to be ready to grow the fleet. All of this is an expense that comes with the responsibility of bringing on more drivers, more owner operators. You have to take care of the people that take care of you. So in order to do that, it takes an investment of time and money. Be prepared for that. I've had drivers tell me that they're going to add a second truck and it'll be mailbox money. They said mailbox money. Okay. Nothing is mailbox money. Having an extra driver out there doesn't mean you just get a check in the mail. Frankly, it means you're going to be working twice as hard. You don't have to drive the truck, but when you start adding trucks, you quickly find that adding trucks and driving the truck itself, driving the truck is not the hardest part of this job. It's everything else that goes into it. So be prepared for that. Be prepared for the risks that you take. Remember, an owner-operator or just a company driver that's driving under your authority, if they have the slightest little claim, fender bender, and in this industry, there's a lot of cutthroat people trying to take advantage of everyone. You know, there's an attorney. I remember seeing these ads in Texas, and it's on the billboard, and you see commercials running where there's a guy, he calls himself the Hammer. And in his commercials, he's going to go after truck drivers. And in the commercial, he's standing on a W900 van. He's standing on the roof of this thing, and that's his stage to do this commercial, talking about how he's going to just go after truck drivers, commercial drivers. Those guys are out there. They are going to get you, okay? They're looking for any opportunity to get you. What I found out recently is just about anybody can file a claim against you. As your trucks are driving down the road, your number is on the side, your name is on the side, and all they have to do is see the number, make a phone call and say that you hit them, and it's your word against them. They could do it to any truck on the road, your word against them. So, going back to being prepared. How can we be prepared for all of that? First of all, go back to a little bit here, talk about rates. We need to know how to negotiate, we need to know the trends, and we need to understand this new ELD technology. It's here. We can't shoot ourselves in the foot and work cheap. Now, I have a lot of people that I know that have gone out, they're trying to buy older trucks, they're trying to figure out ways to stay on paper, they waited past the December deadline, they're waiting for this April 1st deadline, hoping that it gets thrown out so that they can continue running on paper. Now, ELD or not, I'm not either pro or for them or against them, but when you are running illegally, okay, if you have to stay on paper so that you can have the flexibility of paper to stay profitable, what that means is you're not charging enough. You're running cheap freight, okay? There's really no way around that. If you are not profitable running within the hours of service, you are not charging enough to your customers. End of story. There really is no way to do this other than charge enough that you can be profitable and run the loads legal. There's a Facebook group, the Truckers Coach group is what it was in, and Sharon posted a comment about how drivers are shooting themselves in the foot. They're taking these runs that are 700-800 miles. that before this ELD mandate, on paper, you could make it work, okay? Quote unquote, make it work, because you could have the flexibility to, calculate against your clock what the speed limit would be versus what your actual miles were. If you actually ran at an average of 50 miles an hour, including your stops, you could go and say, I ran 770 miles because I had 11 hours of drive time at 70 miles an hour. Now, the DOT is going to know you fudged your logs because you can't average 70 miles an hour, but they also can't prove it. So a lot of people have gotten away with stuff like that over the years. With ELDs, you can't. Here's the problem, and this is why I say it's cheap freight. If you're not charging enough to be profitable, that run should take 2 days, okay? It needs to take 2 days to do a run that would, the brokers used to call it, I need a strong solo. I need somebody that can do it, a strong solo. They're not willing to pay a team. They just want a solo that can make it work, okay? When you're a solo that's making it work, essentially what they mean is they are not willing to pay for a team. They're not willing to pay for this to be on the truck for 2 days. They're looking for somebody that can squeeze it in there and run it cheap, okay? It might be a great rate per mile. It might be fantastic and meet all your numbers. But if it really needs to be on your truck 2 days, ties your truck up 2 days, and you don't get a load the next day or maybe not until the next afternoon, was it really enough? In most cases, I found that no, it wasn't enough. It was cheap freight. So we're coming into the spring. That's one of the obstacles that we have to overcome. April 1st is the deadline. They are going to start putting drivers out of service if they are not compliant with this ELD mandate. Out of service, which means it's not going to be a warning anymore, a slap on the wrist. It means you will sit there at the scale house until you're legal again. Okay? You don't have hours to run. You can't prove it. It's essentially you don't have a logbook. All right, so make sure that you're aware of how to manage your clock, because you have to make sure you're charging for your time. Have this discussion with one of the YouTube guys that's out there, and he and I butt heads quite a bit about this, but you need to know what your daily fixed costs are. So his thing is, he says that when an OTR operation, you never have short runs. You never have the 250-mile runs. And if it's, the short run, you should just figure out what your missed opportunity would be. In other words, if you figure that you could run 600 miles per day and you needed $2 per mile, then you should just charge $1,200, whatever the mileage is, because that's your missed opportunity. Okay, that might be one way to recoup that money, but what you need to understand is there are places you will go where you might not be able to get any money. You might not be able to get anything out of there. South Florida in the off season, for example. I have seen people that go into a certain area, take a load that should be one of these 2-day loads. Okay, it's 700-800 miles. They force it into South Florida because they think it's a really good rate. They can make it work. Then they get down there and they sit and they wait. They wait for that rate per mile. And there's a lot of times where you won't get the rate per mile that you're looking for. Now, if your fixed cost daily is $150 or $200, $250, $300, $350 a day, daily fixed cost, that's what it costs you to sit there, even if you don't work, right? If that's the case, if that was a day that you should have otherwise been actually generating revenue, you should be earning money, collecting something, earning something on that truck. That means that's missed opportunity. And I have seen people sit and wait and not book a load because they couldn't get the rate per mile they wanted. That means the next day that cost rolls over. They still have to cover the cost. Your insurance payments don't stop. Your license plate didn't get 1 day less expensive, right? All of these costs combined. Understand your costs, understand your daily fixed rates. What does it cost you to sit there even if you're not moving? There is a cost to that, and understand what that cost is. So it's important to know your rates, know your lanes. Now, all of the load boards have tools for that. I would highly suggest, if you are new to this, and there are a lot of new owner-operators, and there are a lot of new, young, fresh carriers, brand new numbers. I get a list emailed to me every day that has hundreds, every single day, hundreds of new carriers, okay, and new brokers too. And I see all of these new numbers popping up. They don't know, and a lot of times, what they're doing. They have no clue how to dispatch. They just see that somebody else was getting a $3 a mile load, but the carrier they were leased to was taking a percentage of that. They could do better on their own. That's their thought process. They get out there and they start hauling this stuff, and they have no clue what happens when they get into a bad area. They don't know how to dispatch. So understand that all of the load boards, that's a place to start, by the way. So I always talk about DAT trend lines. The DAT trend lines information is national level information. So I said it's $2.14 a mile for a van. You're probably not going to get $2.14 a mile out of the Northeast, out of Maine. It's not going to happen. All right. You might, $2.14 a mile is probably not going to happen out of South Florida for a few more weeks. It might happen in the in season here in a few weeks when produce season starts, but not right now. So that's the average. If it's not coming out of there, there are other places where you're going to get significantly more than that. So out of the Midwest areas, you might get $3 per mile. Out of the Southwest, it'll be low. Out of Southeast in Florida, it'll be lower. The average nationwide is $2.14. Understand where those markets are, where you need to dispatch the truck to earn the most revenue. And, the most per mile, the most to maximize the profitability for your time. Understand those. Now, one of the discussions I had recently was that, the information from these load boards is falsified or manipulated or whatever, right? Because not everybody posts their numbers. Most people that have 1 or 2 or 5 trucks, even as many as 10 trucks, most people don't participate. Most people don't give their numbers into these. And they don't understand where DAT, for example, gets the load information, gets the numbers that they quote. So let me give you a little insight on that. Carriers that typically have 10 trucks or more seats on the load board typically, which means you're spending about $800 or $1,000 per month on the load board. Usually when you get into roughly that range, they will offer that carrier, because they assume that carrier has enough volume to give them reasonable average numbers. A carrier that only has 1 or 2 trucks or 5 trucks, the numbers that they pull in will typically be outliers. They're typically going to be all over the board. They might do $1 a mile one day and $5 a mile the next day. But if they can average the numbers from a carrier that's got 10 or 20 trucks, the numbers that they get will be a little more accurate. Plus, on their side of it, if you think about it, rather than taking a sample of 150,000, maybe they can do a sample of 20,000. But it's still going to be an accurate representation overall of the market. It's just averages and trends. That's what we're looking for. So DAT and the other load boards as well, they will ask the carriers and the brokers to allow them access to their TMS systems, their transportation management software. Okay. What that gives them is the actual rates. There's no manipulation involved. It's the actual rates that were either charged. The broker sent the confirmation to the carrier. The broker will send the invoice to the customer. The carrier will invoice the brokers and so forth. Carriers will invoice direct shippers. All of that information is collected from these systems, because these are the actual systems that generate the invoices and generate the rate confirmations. They're able to get the actual numbers. Nobody submits numbers and just write something down and these are my numbers for today and these are the averages. They actually pull the actual information from the TMS. So there may be, I'm sure there are people out there that, falsify a page or two here or there. But overall, most of the outliers are picked out of that, and most of the numbers are averaged. We're looking at averages with this. Yes, you could go out there, you could do substantially higher. You might be able to get, right now the flatbeds say they're $2.50 a mile on average. You might be able to go out there and get a $5 per mile load. But if you got a $5 per mile load, likely somebody else is pulling something for $1 per mile or 80 cents per mile, paying for their fuel, the cheap freight. It averages out, and the average nationwide is roughly $2.50. Okay, there are regional differences in DAT, the trend lines. Now, the trend lines information is absolutely free. Any of you can watch that. So, going back to being prepared for the season, if you are leased to a carrier that only runs their own freight, their internal load board, or if you only have access to the information the carrier provides, this information is absolutely free, the DAT trend lines. And you could just Google that, DAT trend lines, and it will give you the average rates across the country. And if you click on your individual segment, so if you're a van or a flatbed, and so forth, you can click on that and it will give you the individual breakdown for regional areas as well. If you're leased to a carrier and you don't have any information from a paid subscription load board, that's free information. Keep an eye on that. I come across a lot of people, especially this time of year in the spring, when rates are spiking. They're just all over the board, and there's a lot of opportunities out there, but owner-operators and drivers that are leased to a carrier that doesn't supply this type of information can often be taken advantage of. A lot of times carriers have contract freight rates, and they are not seeing these spikes in rates. And the owner-operator doesn't even realize that there's other opportunities out there because they essentially have blinders on, and they're not seeing the rest of the market. This is an opportunity for you to see the rest of the market. Get out there and watch for it. So the DAT trend lines is absolutely free. If you go to truckstop.com, just on the home page of that, you select the load board, and there's a very basic rate index right there as well. Free information. Use that information to gauge the market and know what you're getting. Know what you might not be getting for that matter. Understand where you're at with your carrier. Maybe you should talk to your dispatchers, talk to your fleet managers and so forth. Try to get more of this information and make sure that they are doing the hard work as well. Fleet managers and dispatchers, they better have this. But if they're not sharing the information with you, you're at a disadvantage and you need to go out and find it for yourself. Another thing to be prepared for. Know the rates, know the lanes. Now we can talk about working on your expenses. We're coming into the spring season. If any of you, we have quite a few callers on, and it sounds like, I know Elizabeth is in the other room, and we literally, just before the show went on, we had one of our drivers call with a major emergency mechanical breakdown issue, and she's handling that, and I know she's also screening calls. So if any of you have any questions or comments, go ahead and raise your hand, press 1 on your keypad, and that will bring you into the room. It looks like we had a couple that were raised, and she may not have gotten to them in time, but she is handling this other issue. So if I see it up, I will just bring you on myself. All right, so now we need to talk about something that I don't talk about enough on this show, and that is managing your expenses, managing the other side. I want to see if any of my drivers are on here because they typically watch. My drivers, Chris and Jason, were going back and forth just a couple days ago on we have our own little Facebook private group just for our own company. And they were going back and forth about something. And Chris's thought on this, and I know where he's coming from, and I'm not going to throw him under the bus, but he's got thick skin, so I'll talk about him. His thought on this is he does not pay for fuel. He does not pay for fuel because he charges that to his customer. He looks up, he knows what his 30-day average is on fuel economy, and he looks and sees what the price for fuel is on his route. Whatever he will actually burn in, cost for fuel, he will charge that exact amount to the customer. That's all very well and fine, and I understand that. But by that logic, nobody buys fuel. Nobody buys fuel. So he thought he was saying something new because other people are buying fuel because they're not using that formula. But by his logic, nobody buys fuel. It just comes out of what we charge the customer. And I see the angle, I see what he's getting at, but it's a perspective change that we need to focus on. When you think that way, none of us pay for fuel because we're charging the customer a rate, and our fuel cost comes out of that rate we charge. Whatever's left is ours. And whatever after cost and after we pay for everything, whatever is left is profit. Well, that's true. But if a customer is willing to pay you $1,000 for a run, and you calculate out, okay, I need $1,000 because it's going to cost me exactly $283.16 for fuel, and yada yada yada. I'm going to figure it out. I need $1,000 for this run. If they're willing to pay you $1,000, they're also willing to pay me $1,000. And what if it's only going to cost me, I get 10 miles to the gallon and you only get 6? It means I'm making more money on that run. The customer is willing to pay to get the freight moved. And the number the customer is willing to pay doesn't matter what your fuel economy is. And you're right in a way, whatever comes out after your costs is profit, but whatever the customer is willing to pay doesn't change. Now that can bite you two ways. First of all, not saving that money is coming off your bottom line. So if you're spending money on fuel, it doesn't matter if the customer is paying for it or not. If you're spending that money on fuel, it's coming off your bottom line. It's coming out of your profits. The other way that can bite you is if you are calculating your rates based on what your fuel economy is, and if they don't pay for your fuel, but I come in and I get 10 miles a gallon, you only get 6, I could underbid you, still make the same profits, and I get the run and you don't. So that could bite you two ways. It's always important to take your costs into consideration when you're bidding a load. Of course it is. When you're bidding a load, it's important to know what your profit margin is. It's important to know how much it would cost you to run that load. We talk about this, I like to have my daily fixed costs and my variable costs and figure it out and know what it will take. If it's going to take me 2 days, I need to make sure I'm getting enough money for 2 days. And if it's a certain number of miles, I need to make sure that my mileage costs are covered. I get that. But we also need to take into consideration the other side of the coin and know that the customer is only going to pay a certain amount. The customer only has a certain amount of revenue, a certain amount that load is worth to move. For example, I have a customer that deals in, water, okay? Now, I can go to the tap over here, turn it on, and I get water out of the tap. I'm willing to spend a couple dollars for a bottle of water, but there's a limit to how much I'm willing to spend to get a bottle of water when I can get it free out of the tap, right? We all have a limit somewhere. If somebody said $10 for a bottle of water, I'm drinking tap water today, okay? This customer of mine does something like that. We're in a situation right now with the way the rates are, his business is taking a huge hit because his customers may not find the value in what he offers because shipping costs are so much. It may come to the point where he may not be able to sell his product anymore because people can get tap water, right? It's a tricky situation. Now, every product out there has that breaking point. There are some products that just aren't worth the cost of shipping. That's the supply and demand factor working. There are some products that the shipping cost itself with the current rate market may not even justify shipping the goods in general. It might cost more to ship them than they could sell it for. It's just not worth it. I'm not going to buy a bottle of water for $10. If it costs you $10 to ship it to my house, I don't want it. I will drink tap water. You see what I mean? There's always a tipping point for that. If the cost of shipping all of the raw products, shipping the iron ore and shipping the coal and the coke and all these to the steel mills raises the price of steel, if it raises it so much that they have to raise the price of a car that might cost $50,000, I'd like to have that new car for $50,000. But now the steel cost is so much they have to raise the price of the car another $10,000. Now it's a $60,000 car. I don't want that car for $60,000. It doesn't make the car nicer, but the shipping costs of producing something will raise the price. Now I don't want that car, okay? So if I don't want to buy that car, that's one less car they sold. That's that much less steel they had to buy. That's that much less steel they have to ship. And now at some point you hit a breaking point. There is a cost to everything, and supply and demand works that way. Supply and demand is working that way with what we're doing right now. Understand that your costs are a factor in the rates, but that the rates are overall dictated by supply and demand. Supply and demand on both sides. Supply and demand of how many trucks are in the market, okay? How many trucks are available? How many loads are there and how many trucks are there? We talk about that supply and demand all the time. But remember, there's more to it. Supply and demand works across the whole spectrum of what we do. We're shipping products. So if the shipping cost raises the price of the product, they no longer want the product, we no longer ship it. So that shipment doesn't go out. Now there's less loads out there. If there's less loads, now we hit a breaking point. It works both ways. Raise the price of the trucks because there's more loads to haul. Lower the loads because it's not worth paying for the trucks. There is a breaking point. There always is. Supply and demand works on both sides of the equation, and you have to remember that. If you're charging your costs into the rate, remember that rate isn't set by what your costs are. That rate is set by the market, the supply and demand. The only way to save money, and this became just clear as a bell to me in 2015 and 2016 when our rates, the average rates, were just barely above cost. Now, I used to give some of the other coaches and radio shows and things, I kind of didn't agree with some of the things they were saying because a lot of their advice was based on mileage contracts. All right, so I'm going to throw this out. So Kevin Rutherford does a lot of talk about controlling expenses. The reason that he talks a lot about controlling expenses is because most of his experience with the trucking industry, his trucks were on a mileage contract. So he was getting, and I don't know what his rates are, but let's say he was getting $1.25 a mile, all miles. There's nothing that he can do. His contract says he gets $1.25 per mile, all miles. And there are a lot of you out there that are on a mileage contract. No matter what you do, you can't get any more on a certain run or a certain lane because that's your contract. You get $1.25 all miles. The only way to put more money on the bottom line, the only way to earn more is to save on your expenses. Your revenue, your income won't go up. You can't change it. You can only get it so high, but you can always bring your expenses down. So saving on fuel economy, saving on your maintenance costs. Now, when I was posting the show out tonight, I share it in all the Facebook groups, and I made sure to share it in the Maintenance Matters group. I made sure to share it in the 9+ miles per gallon group. I made sure, because right now, that's who I'm talking to. You need to save on the fuel economy. You need to save on your maintenance costs because that puts money directly on your bottom line. I think when we get into markets like we are, and what I expect 2018 will turn into be, we are going to be just raking in the greenbacks. All right, money is going to be flowing in. Don't forget to control your expenses, especially those of you out there that are new. It's very, very easy to get into this business right now. People are giving away trucks, making a fortune doing it, but anybody can get in a truck. And it's easy for these, in some cases, scam companies, these lease purchase companies. They're third party, but they're still these lease purchase companies. They're selling these $30,000, $40,000 trucks, and they're selling them on, in some cases, $2,500, $3,000 a month payments. And they're paying them, they're breaking the payments down weekly, which is an interesting sales tactic. If you tell somebody that, the payment's only $700 per week, I can afford $700. That's not so bad. But if you say, that payment's going to be $2,800 a month, it's a little steep. That's a sales tactic that a lot of these fleets are using right now. These big third-party leasing companies, they're trying to use that, minimize it technology or tactic rather, trying to make it sound like you can afford this, but you can't. These trucks are super expensive. Okay, but a lot of people are getting into it because right now you could afford it. Eventually, supply and demand will bring rates down or level them out. We don't know where that number will be. We don't know. If the economy turns in a few years, things could turn around the other way. We could have another bubble like we had in 2007. And you might not be able to, sell your truck for your costs right now. If your cost is $1.25 or $1.50, $1.60 per mile, if that's what it costs to pay the driver, pay yourself, make a profit, pay the truck payment, remember that the rates in 2015, 2016 were just barely over that. And a lot of times that was cost. So if you're getting into this industry right now, and I'm talking to you, if you're brand new, pay attention. If you are brand new owner operator, brand new carrier with your authority, pay close attention. The rates that you're seeing right now are not typical. Be careful. Be very, very careful. We don't know what will happen. Know what your bottom line cost is and work in a reasonable driver pay, work in a reasonable profit amount. The rest, consider that a bonus. Put it away. Eventually, these rates will go the other way, and they're going to be just above cost again. This is a trend that we always see. It typically goes on a 5 to 7 year period. I think because of some of the new regulations and the way the industry is changing, the way the market is changing, I think we might see maybe a 2-year uptick, which is normally about a year. I think we might see it about 2 years, and then I think it'll come back down I think it'll level out a little above what we were at before, but that's because our costs are a little bit higher than they were before because the time factor involved. That being said, your costs need to be in line, and you need to control your costs as much as possible. Going back to the way my driver does it, he charges the customer for fuel. If he's getting 6 miles to the gallon and I'm getting 10 miles to the gallon and the cost, and the rates come down, guess what? I'll still be profitable and he's going to be working for fuel money. It's very difficult. So saving money is always an important way to control and earn more. Abe Lincoln said it best. A penny saved is a penny earned. If you can save a penny that you otherwise would have spent, that money goes directly in your pocket. That money is direct profit. Okay? It's not, and you might have to pay tax on it. Okay? Paying tax is a good thing. Paying tax means you earn something. If you don't pay tax, it means you didn't earn any money. Our goal is to earn money. We don't want to pay any more tax than we have to. We don't want to pay more tax than we are legally bound to. We don't want to pay tax that, we take all the write-offs we can and, legally we want to avoid tax, but we don't want to be fraudulent about it, right? But the key is you want to earn enough money that you have to pay tax at some point because that means you're earning money. Earning money is not a bad thing. That's what we're trying to do in business. But understand that saving money is even better than earning money because everything you save is profit. So if you're getting 6 miles to the gallon, yeah, you can charge it to your customer. That doesn't mean your customer is paying for fuel any more than it pays for everybody's fuel. Technically, the shippers pay for everybody's fuel because the shippers are paying for the freight, paying the freight bill. And all right, let me go over here. We got a couple phone calls. It doesn't look like Elizabeth is screening them, so let me jump over to get the phone lines up here. Jump over to the 724 area code. Sorry if I catch you off guard a little bit. 724 area code. I'll bring you on right now. Welcome to the show, and how can we help you? What's on your mind? 724. Do you hear us? If you're watching the video, come back to the phone lines. 724 area code. All right. We'll put you back on hold. All right. We'll put you back on hold if Elizabeth can get to you and see if she can. Let's see if she can get you to listen in. 724 area code. All right. Well, his hand's raised, but he's not paying attention. I'm not sure he or she. For those of you listening in on the phone lines, it looks like our call screener is off duty right now. So if you have any questions or comments, I saw a few lines pop up here and then fell off because she didn't get around to screening the calls. I'm watching the lines myself right now. If you want to raise your hand again, go ahead and press number 1 on your keypad and I will bring you on the air. So fuel mileage is a big way. Fuel is the second biggest expense. Second biggest. I've talked about this a couple times before, but I'm wondering if any of you know what the biggest expense is. The number one expense. I'll give you a minute to think about that. The biggest expense in the trucking industry, in your business, the biggest expense. I'm going to take this call from the 203 area code, and then we'll come back to that. 203 area code, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
It's Dave.
Hey, Dave.
The biggest expense is the employee.
You cheated. You're right.
I didn't cheat. That's the answer.
You're right. You're right. That's right. The employee, the driver, even if you're driving it yourself, you are your own biggest expense. Now, a lot of people think that that is the one place where they can save money and charge lower rates. And I think that is something that a lot of people don't consider as part of their expenses.
I agree. I was talking about. I called in about you got into the fuel thing. Chris, Jason, and I were talking on the Facebook group.
Yep.
And we were looking at a metric of comparing the fuel to the rate per mile and getting a percentage. Just like labor would be a percentage, so you can figure out what's left over as your profit margin. And we were down to 19%, and we don't know what anybody else for fuel as a percentage of the total rate per mile, and we don't know what anybody else's is, so we don't have anything to compare to. Do you have any idea what a good percentage ratio fuel to rate per mile would be?
That's a good one, and I don't think a lot of people break it down percentage-wise. I know I never really have. It's something that I may have to look at. For everybody out there, why don't you elaborate a little bit? I saw your comments, and I know where you're going with that, but why don't you elaborate a little more on how you came up with those numbers?
Okay, so I'm running about 39 that Kevin Rutherford product. They're Let's Truck fuel gauges. I think I'm running at about 39 cents per mile, 30-day rolling average. Because when I did an interview with Red Viking Trucker, I realized that my expense was really high. I was running about 45 cents per mile for fuel. So I slowed down and I paid better attention to where I'm fueling. Now, when you compare that 39 cents to 204 a mile, I believe that's when you divide the all miles into the fuel, it came out to about 19%, 19.11. And Jason Hughes, flatbed had a higher cost per mile because, he's got a lower fuel economy. I think he's buying fuel just as cheaply as I can. But, because he's in a flatbed, I think he's getting like 6.4 is what he said. Now, when you compare his number of 45 cents to his higher rate oil miles because he's in a flatbed, he still came to roughly the same percentage of the cost ratio of 19% of every dollar that he makes goes to fuel.
Which is interesting. And it's I guess it's a good number to look at. But I'm not sure how a percentage of revenue is necessarily the best way to do it. It's, I guess, an interesting comparison between different operations. I'm not sure that, the percentage of your costs could change if your rates went up, your percentage of your fuel cost would go down. If your fuel cost went up, your percentage would go up. But it doesn't really tell you, it only tells you relative one to the other. So I guess it's an interesting number to know, but I'm not sure that it would help you really control those costs very well.
Well, it will tell you that something needs adjusting. Either you need to make more or you need to buy cheaper fuel. So if you put that in comparison with just running your cost per mile by tracking every single fuel tank, if that percentage is high, say 24%, but your fuel cost is low, you know that you need to make more per mile, so something needs to be adjusted on that end of the spectrum.
Well,
so it's like a two-piece puzzle.
I can see kind of the logic behind that. I'm going to have to think about this a while, because I see what you're saying, and it would be interesting to know for comparison purposes. I don't know that a long-term track of percentages would really change a lot. For example, let's say you're at 19%. You come down to South Florida. You deliver a load. Your load in could be, $5 a mile into South Florida, but then you deadhead out. Well, your percentage on your deadhead back out is going to be, how do you figure that?
Well, these numbers also wouldn't be per load basis. This would be something you look at once a month, and even once a month when you do bookkeeping isn't that accurate because sometimes the revenue falls in a different week than the miles that you ran. So by looking at it quarterly, you can look at it if any adjustments need to be made. That's the way I'm looking at it right now. It's just a new metric that Jason brought up, and it seemed interesting.
It's an interesting number.
Anybody else is tracking it.
It's an interesting number to know, just kind of for comparison purposes, or just to compare. Like you said, you're versing it against Jason. His rates are a little higher, but so is his fuel economy, and his cost percentage fuel-wise is pretty much equivalent to what yours is. interesting to know. I'm not sure that knowing a percentage is a good way to control those costs, because it's relevant. Your percentage is relevant to something else. You could the variable changes on both sides. So if your rate went higher, it could change your percentage, or if your fuel economy went up or down, it could change your percentage. So it depends on two different things, and I'm not sure that they're not relevant to each other. That's the problem. So now if you're saying that you're relevant to maybe your maintenance costs, your maintenance cost goes up, and then all of a sudden you see your fuel cost as a percentage goes up as well, or your maintenance cost goes up as a percentage of your fuel cost. Now you know that maybe those could be related to each other, but those two, neither of those have anything to do with what you can charge to the customer. So your revenue overall, now it could, I guess, have something to do with the territory you run and things like that. And could you increase your revenue and bring that percentage down by just running different lanes? That maybe I could see as a good way to help improve your profits, but not really control your costs so much, more so just improve your profitability by just dispatching a little better. So I could see some use to it, but really I think to me it's just an interesting number to know, but I'm not sure necessarily that it's going to help you control those costs, other than now you're in a competition with Jason, and I'm sure you're both going to try to beat each other on that.
Well, that's the only way we can compete against each other, because he can't beat my fuel economy and I can't beat his revenue. So if I try and get that lower and he tries to get that lower, that makes both more profitable if we can achieve a lower percentage. But at the end of the day, it goes back to a percentage of revenue being kept as the net, the profit. The magic number, according to Kevin Rutherford, is 50%. I think it can be higher if you control your costs, instead of like Chris, I'll just charge it in the rate and hope everything sorry for stuttering, works out in the wash. Because at the end of the day, my goal is 60%. I'm at 52. And I know that profit percentage of the revenue, and I know that Jason Hughes, because of his operation, what he does is operating at a much higher profit margin, and that's another number to look at. So comparing profit, the percentage of fuel, the percent of maintenance, it's more than just a two-piece puzzle just for fuel. You're putting everything together, because you're talking about cost per day. There's different metrics to look at, and if you take all these different metrics and look at them and understand them, there's something that can be learned to make you more profitable.
I agree. I mean, the more ways you look at a problem, the better your understanding of the problem and the more opportunity you have to solve that problem. So any different way, and certainly comparisons between two different operations, that's an interesting number to know. It'll certainly help you, in a competition, try to drive that down. I think a fleet that had a number of trucks, multiple trucks, trying to beat that, or if you were keeping your costs down year over year. Now, the one place where fuel and rates does overlap is fuel surcharge. So as the fuel price goes up, the rates should also go up. So if you're at 19% right now, if fuel was $5 per gallon or fuel was $1 per gallon, that percentage should not change much. It should be right in that same area, because the actual rates charged to the customers should go up or down roughly that same percentage as the fuel cost changes. So that would be interesting to see if that's within the adjustment for the fuel surcharge of the rates. I could also see it, comparing historical values. If you were getting 18% last year and now you're getting 19%, why? Are you running faster? Are you, why did your fuel economy drop? You've got more miles on the truck. You changed your tires. What changed? It'd be interesting to see, why did that go up? Did you change the way you were running? Did you start running in different territories? So I guess anytime you compare different areas and different numbers off of your profit and loss statement, so your fuel cost against your revenue or your maintenance cost against your fuel cost, and to see how they relate to each other, it can help you understand the numbers a little bit better. So I guess I take back what I was saying. Anytime you do anything like that, it can help you understand the numbers better, and in understanding the numbers can help you to improve them. So from that, I can see where there's a benefit.
Awesome. Let me put you back on point. You're talking about the most expensive cost, and I'll sit back on the side and listen to the rest of the show.
All right. The most expensive cost, driver pay. I'm going to leave you on for a minute because I know you understand this. A lot of people, I do a presentation in front of a group, and I will go around the room and I will say, what do you need to move any given load? Forget about the trends, forget everything. Just based on your own costs, what do you need? And people will, across the board, say, there's always an extreme that says, I need 60 cents per mile. And then there's somebody else says, I need 250 a mile. And I always pick on the, extremes of one or the other. And I go to that person that's on the low end, 60 cents a mile. My first question is, what do you pay your driver? And they're always dumbfounded and say, well, I don't have a driver. I drive it myself. That right there tells me that they did not consider the fact that if they don't work driver pay into their equation, they are willing to work for free. Now, you might be willing to work for free because you know what your operational cost is, but at what point do you draw that line? Are you willing to work for 10 cents a mile all miles, 20 cents, 30, 40, 50? This gets into the point where if you don't factor that into your equation on what you need to run, that's when I go and I start reviewing people's numbers and I see that they could literally sell their truck and give up their authority, go get a job working for one of the big mega fleets and make more money because they never even considered what they need to pay themselves. It was never even in their mind that they need to pay themselves first. It's a cost. When I turn the question around and say, if you were going to hire a driver to drive your truck, what would you pay them? And I always get the two extremes on that. I'll pay him 60, 70 cents a mile, or I'll pay him, I do it, I could find somebody to do this for 30 cents a mile. Again, I always pick on the extremes. I say, okay, well, 30 cents a mile, that's all you're worth. I'm worth more than 30 cents a mile. I own the truck and okay. You said you could hire somebody to do a job as good as you for 30 cents per mile. That's all you are worth. Remember that. Remember that if you think you could hire somebody to do the job for less than you're willing to do it for yourself, you're not doing a good enough job for yourself. Any thoughts on that, Dave?
So, yeah, I mean, I know that I would like to net about $100 grand. That works out to about on a 6-day work week, about $333 a day. And to run the truck costs about $72 fixed costs a day. So I haven't really broke this down like you have it figured out, but this $400 a day sound like an average 410 fixed costs per day on a 6-day work week.
And that's including your like a profit and all your costs, right?
Yes.
Yes. Then I think you're in the ballpark. I do think so. Yes. But just remember, that's where a lot of people think, oh, if I'm not running the truck, there's no cost. So I'll sit and wait till tomorrow when the rates are better. But tomorrow you'll have to earn $800 just to break even, just to cover your costs and get that pay that you need. Whereas you could have taken a load for $400 today and then $400 tomorrow and still cover your costs and make the same amount of money at the end of the week. A lot of people don't factor that in. And there's more to it. I know there's a lot more to it than that, so I don't want to get into all the details. But, yes, I think your numbers are really close.
Now, if you take that super solo load and you run it into 2 days, would it make sense to charge the 1-day rate of whatever you needed and then tack on, for the next day delivery, that $410, and that's the rate you quote?
Absolutely. Absolutely, because what the problem is, and that's exactly why you need to think of it in a daily rate, a minimum daily rate plus your variable cost, your variable mileage cost. So if you need your $400 per day, if you took that super solo load that's 800 miles and you figured I want to get it for, I can do it for $2 a mile, you get $1,600. That's great, right? It's good money for a 1-day run, but it's 800 miles. You can't do it in 1 day now, and you're on ELDs. Now it's over 2 days. You do 400 miles, maybe 500 miles and finish out the next day, and you can't get a new load until the 3rd day. So it's 2 full days really that you're committed to this load. Well, now $1,600, if your cost is plus your variable cost, you're only making $800 a day. It's not so good. So yeah, I think you absolutely need to figure in what your daily cost is, tack that on for the next day delivery. And now that's your cost, and that needs to kind of be your walk-away number adjusted to the market.
See, that's where I think it's smarter, because that will get you the load as opposed to going to the other fellow that you're talking about, the missed opportunity, you may be overcharging for that second day. So you know, if the Super Solo trip for 700 miles out of the bad area paid $2 a mile, 1,400 for one day, but it takes you 2 and you charge 18. If you charged $2,000, 2,100, more than likely you're not going to get the load.
Exactly.
But the way you figure it, it covers your costs.
Exactly. And profit. You're going to figure a profit margin in there to sit. If my truck needed to sit, if a customer needed to send me to South Florida and deliver on Monday and sit there until Friday, I would need to figure out how to still be profitable. I'm not just going to charge them $100 a day, because that doesn't even cover the costs of sitting there. You need to figure that out. Now, I can't charge them, if I wanted to get $2 a mile and my average, I like to get 600 miles a day, I couldn't justify charging a customer $1,200 a day either. There's no way they would pay that. It's not worth it. I don't have nearly that for the cost of sitting. So you need to figure out your daily cost. And absolutely what you're saying is spot on, Dave. So I'm going to put you back on hold. And I think you've got a really good handle on it. I know it's really interesting. Dave obviously is leased to Patriot Star, which I don't think is even my company anymore. I just work here just like they do. And it's kind of fun to watch what they're bringing to the table. They're all tracking their numbers. They're all competing against each other, figuring out different ways to compare their numbers. Like he said, to percentage of the fuel cost against the revenue they're generating. And, Van is not paying quite as much on a rate per mile basis, but I'm assuming his revenues are in line with where they should be versus what the other guy doing the flatbed is doing. Now, the flatbedder does have higher costs. His fuel mileage is higher, as all flatbeds and step decks. The fuel mileage is lower, rather. The cost is higher. And then the equipment costs as well. There's tarps, and there's a lot more manual labor involved for tarping and strapping and chaining things down. And then the trailer is, significantly more. And Jason that he was referring to has a specialized, really nice trailer. And so absolutely, comparing numbers like that is fun to watch these guys all doing that. And I'm learning a little bit from them as well as we go. So, but going back to what I was saying, and the biggest cost secondary to fuel, even bigger than fuel, is the driver cost. And understand that driver cost is a huge cost. Fuel is also expensive. And then you've got a lot of people think tires are one of the biggest costs, and tires are expensive, but they are about a penny or two per mile on average. So they're not nearly the biggest cost. Maintenance costs can be on new trucks, might only be 4 or 5, 6 cents a mile. On an older truck, or even, one of the glider kits that have a different, that don't have a warranty on them, things like that, you might be looking at 10 to 15 cents per mile. Of course, when you've got the emissions trucks that, especially in the late 2003 through 2007 model years, those trucks are going to have a lot of maintenance related issues that the pre-2003 trucks won't have. Then you get into the 2009 and up, 2008, 2009, 2010 model year trucks that have the DPF. Those have a whole other list of problems. And then you've got the 2011 and up trucks that have the DPF plus the SCR, where you have to put the urea, the DEF in there. Those have a whole other list of problems. And what we found is from 2004 or late 2003 up until about 2013, the amount of problems that those trucks have, the cost is exponentially higher. And of course, looking at it really just because the trucks are getting older, 2004 through 2007, the cost on some of the different maintenance issues is a little lower on emission stuff, but the trucks themselves are that much older, so the costs have gone up. The 2010 to 2008 through 2011 trucks with the DPF, the particulate filter, that's a whole other list of problems. That cost has gone up. The most expensive trucks on the road right now are the 2010 to 2013 roughly. Fuel mileage on those was absolutely horrible unless they're super well maintained or you got lucky. JD Power and Associates actually did an article in 2013 comparing 2012, I believe, model year truck to a 2002 model year truck, 10-year span difference. In the first, a brand new truck right off the showroom floor had a 48% chance of breakdown lasting 2 weeks or more, versus a 2002 model year truck only had a 5% chance of a breakdown of the same in that same time period, and it was emissions related. Fuel mileage was absolutely horrible for a lot of those trucks. But I'm going to say this. It seems that looking at some of the numbers, 2014, even some of the 2013s, late 2013s, 2013, 2014 and up, fuel mileage came way up. A lot of the emissions controls issues they've worked the bugs out of them, and they continue to get better. It looks like Volvo has figured out a way to get rid of some of the systems that possibly require the DEF. So maybe they're getting away with figured out how to make that better. And a lot of these systems are getting better. We're seeing some of these trucks out of the factory that are getting 10 miles to the gallon and better. Now, the glider kits and the older trucks, the key to those, and the reason that we brought those on, the reason they got very, very popular starting in about 2010, even 2008, was because these new emission trucks were driving people bankrupt. Absolutely horrible. I have two guys that are leased to me recently. One traded in his truck today because it was nothing but problems. Another one actually he came back about 2 weeks ago, was going to turn in my trailer and quit. He was going to throw in the towel because that truck nearly cost him everything. So, we had a heart-to-heart, and he's still with us right now. But these trucks are just absolutely killing people they're bankrupting people. So the emissions technology, however, is getting better. Going back to saving money. If you have any of those trucks that I'm talking about that are really any truck, maintenance is key. Maintenance is absolutely the most important thing to do, especially if you have the 2009 through 2012 to 13 model year trucks. Keeping those emissions control systems clean, operating efficiently, operating the way they're supposed to, and continually doing the proper maintenance at the proper maintenance intervals. Don't go a million miles before you try to get something cleaned and checked. Get it done at reasonable intervals. Get the DPF chained out, because you will absolutely save yourself a lot of time, money, and headaches doing it at regular intervals, even though it can be expensive. I know replacing some of those DPF systems could be $8,000 to $10,000. It's better to spend $8,000 or $10,000 now than have to spend $8,000 or $10,000, in a year or two, because you squeezed another year or two out of it. You squeezed another year or two, but now your turbo's also messed up. Your EGR system's all clogged up, messed up. You've got major soot problems and wear problems. Your engine's going to need a rebuild because you didn't maintain those systems. It's expensive to maintain those, but it's more cost effective to maintain those systems than it is to wait until the last minute. Your fuel economy will stay higher. Those trucks can get spectacular fuel economy if they're well maintained. The new emissions controlled trucks, the new, especially the brand new ones, the 2018, 2019 Freightliners, you're looking at close to bumping 10 miles per gallon hauling general freight at 70 miles an hour. 8 is on the low end of the scale anymore. It used to be that 6 was the average. Now, they still say the national average is 5.9. This coming from some of the manufacturers. Now, the government has put in a lot of new regulations to control that. Everybody loves regulations, right? So they're doing away with some of the classic trucks. You've already seen that, Peterbilt has gone to a slightly more aerodynamic model. The 379 a few years ago was gone. Now it's the 389. It's slightly more aerodynamic. It still has the classic look. The Kenworth W900 is pretty much gone. They're doing a complete revamp of that. It'll be... it's going to look more like the air canisters are coming off the side. The exhaust stacks are going to be a lot more streamlined. Everything, it doesn't look like the same truck at all. Freightliner did away with the classic altogether. Now they've got the, in lieu of the classic, drawing a blank on what they call that one. Not the Cascadia, not the Columbia, not the Cascadia, somebody will help me out with that one. But it's got the somewhat classic square hood look. Kind of looks like an FLD, but no air cleaners on the side. The Coronado, that's what it is. The Coronado. So they've done away with the classic. So all of the manufacturers are trying to get into more aerodynamic models. The trailer manufacturers are on board. Trailer designs have changed a lot recently. The structure, the trailers are lighter. The trailers, they figured out how to make more aerodynamic. The rain gutters along the back, the way that they have changed the front corners of van-style trailers. All of that, have tried to make it a little bit more. Yes, the Coronado, that's what it was, the Coronado. So, all right. So the name of the game, save money, put money in your pocket on the bottom line. Even though rates are high, get out there and chase those great rates. I mean, I'm absolutely ecstatic that the rates are so good. I'm finally starting to see like a positive movement in the industry. It's a good thing. Rates are high. I'm happy with the way rates are going. I'm happy with the trends. But from a coach, advisor, mentor standpoint, control your costs. Do not let these high rates take your eye off the ball, and make sure you control your costs. So that's long term. That's how you put more money in your pocket. There's a lot of money to be made on getting higher rates, getting higher gross revenue, but make sure you control your bottom line and control your expenses. With that, I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. We'll take a couple quick questions here on off of the social media channels. Again, we're streaming live every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Stream live on Facebook, stream live on YouTube. You can find the Facebook group, that Trucking with Authority. Find the YouTube channel, Trucking with Authority. Like and subscribe to both of those. And if you're driving, remember you can always call in. Numbers at the bottom of your screen, 917-889-9924. And remember, you can always call in. I'd rather you call the number and listen on the phone lines than try to watch the video while you're driving. So be safe out there. Let's get to a couple of these questions. What is the best place to get a surety bond for a brokerage? We've been quoted $7,500. If that $7,500 is a one-time payment, that's not bad. But if that's an annual payment, then you have a problem. I would. There are a lot of places. Get out there and start looking. The biggest, looking it up right now because it was slipping my mind. JW Surety Bonds is the biggest one out there. That's a good place to start. May or may not be the best one. There are a lot of places that do write broker bonds. Remember, you have a bond and you also have the trust as well. So you could go to your bank and get a loan, or go to your insurance company and finance it that way. So you have a couple of different options as well. So keep shopping. I'm sure, I know for a fact you can do better than $7,500 a year, even if you have horrible credit. I know that for a fact. I've seen that done. Going back to rates, yeah, flatbed will kill it in about another month. I absolutely agree. I think all segments are going to kill it in about another month. On my broker side of the business, I actually had to have a heart-to-heart with one of my customers today and say, hey, it's not looking good. I have to, I've got responsibility to take care of both sides. As a broker, I have to try to get the best rates I can for the shipper. I'll say I want to make sure I keep care of the trucks. Right now, I'm trying to do everything I can. I'm even, not making any money on the brokerage. Remember, my brokerage is really to supplement the carrier side. So I've done a few loads, like I've made $0 on them just to make sure that that the customer is taken care of. I'm trying to do everything I can, but right now he's got some tall orders that I don't know if I can fill. So this goes back to the supply and demand factor. The rates right now are, I have to charge them, the best I can, the best truck price I can get. And sometimes that's more than it's worth for him to ship some of the stuff. There will be other people in other industries that will go out of business because the freight rates are so high. But that's the nature of the business. And I don't think it'll be my customer, he'll find other solutions. But, you know, something to consider is some of the other solutions that are on the table. At some point, he could buy his own trucks, and that's what he's considering. As a matter of fact, there have been a few of these that he has rented trucks and drove and delivered his own product. Gone to, you know, Penske or Ryder, rented a truck, moved his own stuff because he couldn't pay the rates to make it happen. So absolutely, there are other alternatives. Before somebody closes their doors, they may not put it on a for-hire truck. They may just move it themselves. And there are a lot of products, especially the consumer goods that are moving on a regular basis. That's might be what happens. It may be that the shipper decides that they'll buy their own fleet. If you look at Walmart, Walmart pays their drivers well, and they're saving a lot of money by moving the product on their own fleet. Now, they do outsource, and they do use third-party 3PLs, brokers. They do use other outside carriers, but the majority of their freight is moved in-house on their own trucks because they're saving a lot of money doing it. So, and that's how they keep the cost down on the shelves in their stores, to save money on transportation. Those types of things will be a trend going forward. You may see other big companies buy their own fleets. Okay. Where can I find information about making a business plan? This is a great question. I cover this in pretty good detail at my seminar that hopefully I'll have some information on the next seminar coming out soon. The Small Business Administration, the SBA.gov. The government doesn't do a lot right, but they do that pretty well. A couple things that I like that they do. Small Business Administration. They have an organization, a division of the government that's just there to help people start a small business. And there is a step-by-step process on what to do to write a business plan. Small Business Administration. A lot of free advice right there, a lot of outlines, a lot of step-by-step explanations and description and definitions and all kinds of stuff. The SBA.gov, SBA.gov, Small Business Administration. That is probably the first place. There's a lot of other places you can go, a lot of third-party companies that can give you an outline. If you just Google trucking company business plan or brokerage, freight brokerage business plan, you will find some things. Some of the stuff, take it with a grain of salt, but it'll give you some outlines that you might consider. But if you want to start from scratch, Small Business Administration is the place to go. So that was an easy one. And then, of course, contact your local Small Business Administration was another comment. The Chamber of Commerce often has things like that. There's a lot of sources for that. Yeah, and the Small Business Administration, OIDA is another comment here. Contact OIDA. They've got some information. All right. Driver pay is number one. Yep. That's what we were talking about. Driver pay. Make sure you take that into consideration on your rates. Maintenance is, for some people, maintenance is almost not even a blip on their screen. They've got, with newer trucks under warranty, with new trucks have fewer problems than older trucks. Fact is, newer trucks have a lower cost of maintenance. So a lot of times customers look at the age of a fleet because newer trucks are less prone to breaking down. They're more prone, of course, as drivers, we know that the emissions problems that they cause are a headache, but new trucks statistically are less prone to breaking down. All right. Pacific Financial is another place to go for a bond. Anthony Shaggy says, check out Pacific Financial. And then where can I find drivers? Finding drivers is a good one. We started this show off talking about how there's a driver shortage. Finding good drivers is a problem. The first key to finding drivers is you have to compete with the big fleets. Now, companies like Prime will pick a brand new driver, put them through school, put them in a brand new truck, or at least fairly new truck, pay them 47 cents a mile out of school. Compete with that. That's how you find a good driver. The big fleets are doing it. You have to do it. So, to me, I think, if you're going to put somebody in an older truck, if you want to put them in a 2000 2 truck or a 2000 or 99 model year truck, give them other benefits. It either has to be pay. If you get them in a 99 truck and they're willing to run on paper logs, maybe that's the benefit to them. Maybe that's why they would want to do that. But you have to give them an incentive. And most people are looking for money. I have a stack of driver applications. And I can tell you that, one of the questions I have is, why did you leave the last company? And the reason for most is they were looking for more money somehow. They're looking for more opportunity.
90 seconds.
The company they were working for was downsizing, and they don't have enough work to go around. So basically, they're looking for more money. So driver pay is important. And so we need to buy new Freightliners then. As far as fuel mileage, the new Freightliners are rocking. I love the new Freightliners. The new DD15 with that DT12 transmission.
60 seconds.
I think that is the combination to get right now. I think the Volvo D13, the engineers over there have really been putting something together. I think the Volvos are going to be great. But if it was me right now, matter of fact, I can kind of let you know this. I have some quotes on some 2019 model year Freightliners that we may be bringing onto the fleet. I actually quoted these back in December, and then I got just bombarded with a lot of new owner-operators, so I pushed that order off. But the new Freightliners are just absolutely phenomenal. Right out of the gates, fantastic fuel mileage. Maintenance costs are extremely low. So I think the new Freightliner is where it's at. If you are going to hire new drivers, make sure, first of all, that they're experienced, but give them reasonable, decent, clean, reliable equipment. Give them a decent pay package. And if there's any other benefits that you can get. For example, I have a driver that a fleet owner, I should say, that has a couple of trucks leased to me, and he provides his drivers with a gym membership. I mean, it doesn't seem like much, but if you have a driver that wants to stay healthy and things, that gym membership is $25 a month. It might mean the difference. I know I can see Justin Wood is on here. I don't know if he's still listening in. The fleet that he's with, and he's got, I think he's up 4 or maybe 5 trucks now. He puts satellite TV, Sirius radio. He's got all newer equipment, and all of that is part of it. So that's absolutely, driver amenities, things that you can add to bring value to what the driver's doing. Those are all definitely big things that the driver will appreciate. That's how you find drivers. If you have that and you advertise that and get the word out that you have that, people will come to you, and that's what you're looking for. With new trucks, the payments will be higher. Okay. All right. Couple last questions. I'll wrap up with this. So new trucks, the payments will be higher. And then where is the market headed? Okay, with new trucks, the payments will be higher. Absolutely. But if you look at the maintenance cost and the fuel cost of an older truck, if you're getting 6 miles per gallon with a 2000 or 2002 model year truck, the fuel savings alone will make the truck payment for you. Truck would be free. Maintenance cost. If you're at 10 or 15 cents per mile for your maintenance cost, and you go down to 2 to 3 cents, 5 cents a mile, that alone, that will, make a good chunk of the truck payment. So if you're running old trucks and you've got horrible fuel mileage, or your maintenance cost is, it's extremely high, 20, 30 cents a mile. I know there's some people that are, rebuilding engines and new axles and everything else that comes along with a truck that's, a million plus miles. Those maintenance costs will eat you up, and it will pay the cost of some of these new trucks. So there are definitely trucks out there. Tax breaks for new trucks. Somebody says the tax break. So yeah, you can write off a new truck. You don't pay tax on that money, but that would not be the main reason I would buy a truck. And I don't even want to get into the whole idea of leasing. Leasing trucks, yeah, you can write off that whole payment, but you can write off the whole payment and interest and everything if you buy a truck as well. So yes, you can write off everything. Every penny you spend on a vehicle, you can write it off. It's not necessarily the main reason, because money you spent, remember, spending money, you don't have to pay tax on it, but that means it's also not in your pocket. So it's good to save money. So the idea of buying a new truck, if you could buy a brand new truck and it might cost you $150,000 plus interest and payments, you buy a brand new truck, but you're earning money off that truck and the payments that are coming from it, versus you don't buy a truck, you can't put a driver in it, you're not making any extra profit. So where is the benefit? So you got to go both ways. And I think Shaggy is giving me a hard time here. When will the produce rush get going? Well, here we are coming into the end of March. I mentioned this earlier in the show. I just drove through South Florida today. Strawberries are rocking right now. So the berries and that type of soft fruit will be moving. Oranges will be coming up soon. So produce, or the oranges, Tropicana type juice and things like that will be moving here soon again for that. All right, and in a couple of weeks, as we come into April, we'll start seeing, and toward the end of April and into May, we'll start seeing watermelons and things moving. Now, watermelons are a hard produce. You can move them on vans. That tends to be the leader of the produce market. So you will see, and if you watch the trends and the rates, and you watch, like, go to DAT trend lines, or you watch the hot market map, you are going to see, as we get into late April, South Florida is going to be dark red. This is the one and only time for the whole year that South Florida is dark red, and it's watermelons coming out. Going through the whole country and into Canada even, and a lot will be coming out of Mexico as well, so you'll see the border light up in Texas. A lot of that will be coming up here, and then as that moves north, as we get later in the season, you will start seeing mid-Florida, North Florida, Georgia, North Georgia, and you will see that throughout the year, throughout the summer, moving north until you get into August, September, and October. It'll be up into Michigan, Wisconsin area. And it's interesting to watch that because watermelons and hard produce like that kind of lead the produce market, but you also have your tomatoes are coming out now, which is going on your reefers. You're going to have, again, your soft fruits like your berries. You'll have a corn season coming up here again soon. You'll have all of these other, all the produce will start rocking here pretty soon. So we're just a couple of weeks away. And okay, going back to the tax write-offs, and I said I was going to wrap this up, but we'll get to it in a second. Article 179, Section 179, they call it, with a tax write-off. You can write off currently up to $510,000 in 1 year for equipment that you purchase. Vehicles have some stipulations on that. Make sure you follow the rules for vehicles. You have to have the right vehicle, but you could write off your whole truck for that. Certainly if you have trailers and major purchases like engine rebuilds and things like that, you could write off in 1 year. That being said, if you take a write-off of that much in 1 year, chances are you're going to go into the negative for your income. You won't be able to write off the difference the following year. So just be careful with that. The Section 179 is nice, but depreciation is also pretty nice. A road tractor, remember, they're not called trucks. A road tractor, if you look it up, IRS has a table of how long things are supposed to be written off. If you depreciate a road tractor, it's supposed to be depreciated over 3 years, which is a pretty big chunk of money over 3 years. And talk to an accountant. There's ways you can do it. Straight line depreciation, you take equal amounts over 3 years. Double declining balance, you take more up front, and it gets less and less for the following couple years. But absolutely, depreciation is probably the best way to write off a tractor. 179 for big purchases like maybe trailers, certainly things like engine rebuilds and tire purchases, or most people just expense tire purchases anyway, but things like that. So I am not a tax guy or an accountant. Don't try to be, don't claim to be. I have a pretty good understanding of how it works, but I am not going to try to get into talking about taxes. That is not my lane. So, all right, everyone. Thank you all for joining me tonight. As always, you know, an hour before the show, one of my drivers called me and he said, "What are you going to talk about today?" I don't really know, so I'm going to wing it. And sure enough, here we are, an hour and 37 minutes in, and I'm still going. So, and we only had the 2 calls, and one wasn't even on the line. So that being said, everyone that's still sticking with us, still plenty of people on the phone line, still got a lot of people on YouTube, still a lot of people on Facebook. Thank you all for joining me. It's been fantastic as always. Love you too, Shaggy. Thank you for joining us. Remember to dream big, aim high, strategize your plan, and earn your success, because only you drive you. Have a good night, everybody.